Hey everyone, welcome to the Music Lounge. I am so excited today. Perry, how you feeling?
I
You good?
we have got probably one of the biggest bigwigs from MTV that we have ever had on the show. So I'm super excited. We're fortunate that she said yes to joining us today. So we're
Absolutely.
very happy.
Thank you.
And after that build up, should we talk about current events, Andrew, or should we just jump right into it?
Just jump in, man.
And
Do
so
your
before
bit. Do your
I,
bit.
I will do my thing. So before I make the introduction, I just want to remind people to rate, review, like, and share the podcast so that we can continue to produce new episodes and you can hear amazing stories from people like our next guest. Who we have today is Salli Frattini, who is formerly the SVP, exec in charge, and executive producer at MTV, and is currently the owner of Sunset Lane Productions and does a lot of consulting on a lot of different productions. Welcome, Salli.
Salli,
Hello.
hi.
Hello. Nice to see you guys. Nice
So
to be here.
I hope I didn't make too big of a deal of you being here. I hope that you're not feeling like, oh my God, I can't live up to the hype of that introduction.
Anyone that knows that era knows Salli and, need say
Thank
more.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, it was a good era. When people say, when were you at MTV? I say, I was there during the best time you could have ever been there. It's the best job ever.
It was I think there's probably like 2 or 3 kind of golden ages of MTV. And I feel like the time that I was there, Andrew was there, and you were there longer than us. But that TRL time, it just felt like MTV was hitting on all cylinders at that time, from music to programming to events
The news.
to news to just pop culture. It was just the place to be if you wanted.
It was the only place.
The only place to be, really.
There was no social media. Online was, yes, you had articles online, what we call Web 1, Web 2. But yeah, there was nowhere else to get the information. MTV was known for movies, award shows, reality, scripted, music, artists, celebrity, right?
And it's
Everything.
almost anything that they did at that time was successful, which was incredible.
Because we had good executives in charge.
You know what? You had the we had the passion, for the brand. And I started there in 1988, and my first show was Remote Control. And
Wow.
I really didn't even know a lot about the channel. So I feel like over the years of opportunity, we were the place. This was network and a little bit of cable. No streaming, few cable channels that would compete with us. We totally had the younger audience. Obviously, the relationships we had with our music labels, the fact that we actually had a music department of all these savants that knew music
in every genre, experts across every field.
Yeah. And I didn't come into this as a music buff that was like, I've got to get a job at MTV. I came into this like I went to college in Boston. I went to Northeastern University. I did like 5 internships when I was in school. Northeastern's a 5-year program, so I was really able to sort of, bounce around and learn the basics. I always knew I wanted to get into television. I also during that time, I drove cross country with my girlfriend and became a ski bum. So that was a good,
Wow.
knowledge when I was 20. And I ended up meeting my husband through work when I lived in Boston and he lived in New York. So when I sort of moved to New York, I was like, wow, I need a job here. Some guy named Doug Herzog, who just happened to be friends with my husband, another Emerson alumni, was like, hey, I'm working at this channel, MTV. We really could use some production managers. And that's sort of how it unfolded. It wasn't like, I'm moving to New York and I'm getting a job at MTV. So I was lucky to fall into all this.
Place at the right time. I mean, you sent us a 6-page resume, which was incredible. But I'm looking, before MTV, you got to work on some Olympics programming? Was that as a PA level, or was that your first kind of intro into live production?
Yeah, I had the Olympic bug as a child. Again,
So you're an
when
athlete,
the
right?
Olympic
Or you liked sports
I
and
like sports.
right.
When those Olympics came on every 4 years, we were glued to TV.
I think that was a
And
generational thing because our
it
family
was.
was too. Yeah.
Yep. That and the Ed Sullivan Show. I mean, come on. And the Jeffersons. All the good shows.
All the good shows.
So I feel like I had the sports bug. I did this ski event in Boston, working for this production company I worked for in Boston, Sullivan Associates. And John was like, "Hey, we're doing a ski event." I'm like, "Oh, geez, okay." And I was production managing, unit managing, logistics, was learning about equipment and crew. And I was so young. I was like early 20s. And all of a sudden, I'm at Mount Snow doing this like ski jump race, like running cables to the top of a mountaintop. Like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I was a skier. So I was like, all right, this is cool. And I always wanted to work on the Olympics. So when I got to New York, I started sort of freelancing, and I did this on the road with Entertainment Tonight bit as the location manager. And the tech manager I had worked with, he had worked with NBC. And I was like, oh my God, I've been trying to get an interview, Finally got an interview. I think my last name helped. I was a Frattini. He was a Facina. He was like, who's this girl who keeps calling me? And I got an interview and I got a job. I got a job in 1988. I got married in May and I left in July for Korea. I was gone for almost 3 months.
Wow.
So I'm still married. That was a
Nice.
good
Yeah, I
thing.
was gonna say,
So
way to start off the
yeah,
marriage. I
I
hope your
know.
husband was able to come visit during that time.
He didn't come to Seoul. He did not come
Wow.
to Seoul. It was too far. And I was in a dorm. Like, we didn't have any hotels. We're in a dorm. I was on rowing and canoeing and kayak. I was up at 4 a.m. every day. So I kind of kept my NBC relationships. And then when I came back, that's when I started at MTV because, now I had this Olympic experience. So I came into MTV as a production manager. 1988, it was a whole bunch of creative producers and music savants and people, videos coming in. There was no organization, there was no process. We had a small department of people who did everything. So I think my organizational skills were really helpful. I wasn't one of these creative types, but I was a really good executor. Like, I was like, okay, you want to do this? All right, we'll do this. So, that's sort of how my career started. And then they dumped me into the land of events. So the next thing you know, I'm doing transportation on the VMAs. And then we jumped into spring break, and 89 and 90. Like, anybody who does spring break programming, and I don't know if you've talked to anybody who worked on spring break, but that is like the best training anyone could have ever done. As work in Daytona Beach, and all the years I did 10 years of spring breaks. Every year was a different
Wow.
year. And then I sort of, worked my way up to executive produce them.
Yeah, we had people on from like the label side telling us stories about trying to get artists there on time, and
Crazy.
Vinny
everything probably worked
Potestivo
out.
was talking to us about like on air talent and what he had to do to get them there. And yeah, it was.
Yeah. And nobody had any discipline. And by the way, there was never any rehearsal. We'd sort of go into the week knowing that we had to do, 5 hours of live. Then it became 10 hours of live. Then it was 20 hours of live. Then it was like, we're not just doing VJ segments. Oh, we're going to do this show called Singled Out with Jenny McCarthy. It's brand new. We've never done it before. Let's do a pilot in Daytona. I remember when Yo MTV Raps came to Daytona for the first time. I also remember struggling with local police and in our venues, just talking about the kind of music we were bringing, because people were like, oh my God, you're bringing rap music to our beach? what is this going to mean? We're going to have gangsters and people with records. I had a million different type of jobs, but I think one of the things that I did a lot of and sort of stayed with me throughout the channels was like, I did a lot of the city relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to go into a town hall meeting with a couple people on our team and present what we're doing and why it's fine. I'd have to sit down with the, police department and the town council and, really sell us in. And then, of course, that all led to sort of all the stuff we did in New York and everything on a bigger level with a number of the shows that I worked on.
That's interesting because that's the side behind the scenes that we don't think about on the front facing, whether you're a viewer or even when I was working on the music side. I didn't think about you going and planning with the town months before, and I'm sure it's permits and the support from the police, as you were saying, and
Yeah, getting permission.
and then just you kind of building the programming. You had no playbook. There was no other network for you to learn from that did these kind of shows. So you were
No
just
way.
like,
We just figured it
creating.
out.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And listen, we had fantastic people that worked for us. Let's face it. I feel like we had a lot of homegrown talent at MTV. We met people like, Cap Spence, who was the staging supervisor who lived in Daytona. And, Cap did the first spring break. And I remember meeting him for the first time. And I was just like, wow, he taught us so much about location and electricity and safety and rigging and what does it take to put a stage on the beach.
Wow.
These production designers, these staging designers, these rigging people, and then just really like our staff. It's like when you look at the news department or you looked at the press department or the promo department and you'd be like, okay, this is what we're doing, where do you want to be, like what do you need, and I think one of our biggest selling points throughout the years was the fact that we were homegrown. Most of these people working on this show are staff, and we are not subbing this out to some third party. I stand behind our network, and that's something that changed over the years, obviously.
Well, it was also unique in that MTV and even MTV networks had in-house people who were doing all these things, because most other places you had the programming and development executives in-house, but everything else was sort of farmed out to production companies. Like the fact that you could go to MTV and work at MTV and be staff at MTV and learn and grow a career there was super unique. I mean, other places were not like that.
I know. And those jobs don't exist anymore, sadly.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to go back a second because we were talking about the Olympics and then we jumped around a little bit, but I ended up going back. So I went to MTV. Then I had this child. I had a child in 1990, my first child, who's 35 now. Thank you very much. And I was like, listen, I can't be the first to arrive and the last to leave anymore. And then NBC called and said, hey, we'd like you to come do the 92 Olympics, and we'd like you to do opening and closing ceremonies in track and field.
Wow.
So I had the A venue from the D venue. So I was very proud of myself. And Barcelona was amazing. I mean, it was just incredible. I learned so much. It was the year of the dream team back, the basketball team and USA. And I met Michael Jordan. That was like a big deal in my life. And, it was incredible. But fast forward, I got a call when I was in Barcelona from Doug again. And he says, we need this new position here, the executive in charge of production. He says, there's too much going on. We have all these events. We now are starting to get into some series. We're building up. We're making a beach house in California. We're doing a ski house in the mountains. We have spring break. Can you come back? And I want to hire you as executive in charge of production. So I sort of started a new position again, full time. And, I was there, then I just sort of continued to grow from that.
So you grew, but that title was probably as big as it could have been. Like,
yeah, It was a
You
big
pretty
deal.
much started and left as the head of the
Production
production.
in a lot of ways. But, I'd bosses sort of jump over me. But the relationships made along the way, MTV did a deal with the Olympics in 2001, Salt Lake City, and we also did stuff with them in Atlanta. And we got the rights to the rings. I have a
Wow.
pin with the MTV logo and the Olympic rings. And I remember
Wow.
signing the contract. We did a TRL from there. We did like a countdown show from there, and then we did one of our documentary series from there.
True Life, I
And
think you
True
did.
Life, yep. And I remember signing the contract, and I'm like, does anyone know what's really happening right now? Like, we're signing a contract with NBC. We didn't pay anything for the rights, and we're doing programming. That's how important it was to get the younger audience back then, because NBC didn't own Bravo yet. There was no
Right.
other Universal outlets. So
To
that was
have
pretty
the
cool.
exposure on MTV was priceless.
Yeah. So anyway, that was pretty cool to sort of fast forward the people I knew at NBC, and then I think that also was my foray into starting to work with the different leagues, like the NFL and Major League Baseball and NBA also came to MTV, and they were like, "Hey, how do we get the younger people in?" Well, hence came Rock and Jocks.
Really? Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
realize that how it
yeah.
started.
And
Oh, wow.
MTV Sports, if you remember at that time, was
Yep.
starting to jump into the world of all these action sports.
Mm,
So all of a sudden, before I knew it, I was sort of the person managing a lot of the leagues. So I'm like, how did I get this job? You're like, this is great.
yeah, wow, amazing.
So when we jumped into the land of the Super Bowl, it was pretty much, there had already been a relationship with the NFL. And then I know we can talk about that later, but it's just interesting how everything sort of rolled into the next.
So let's talk about the big award shows, VMAs, movie awards, concerts, biggest of the big MTV events every year. What were a couple of those shows that you're probably most proud of, and a couple of moments in shows that, you know, when they came together, you felt was a real accomplishment for both you and MTV?
All of them, Perry.
All of them, exactly. I mean, there must have been a few things where you're like, we want to do this. And you're like, I don't know how we're going to pull that off. And you ended up doing it.
Yeah,
So,
that was usually every couple months, actually, where we had to like pull something off that nobody would ever thought we would be able to do. You know what? I thought about that question, and very often I will hear a song right on the radio, and I'll be like, oh, I remember that performance on the VMAs.
wow.
And I remember
Music is a
Beyonce.
soundtrack.
Yeah, and I remember like Blink 182, like all the small things, and I remember all the little people jumping on the stage, and
Yeah.
moments like that where I was like, what, we can't, we're not, they're not, what are we supposed to call, they're not midgets, they're small people, they're little people, and all of a sudden they're jumping on the stage. I'm like, oh my god, someone's going to fall and kill themselves. So it's like, I remember that. I remember OK Go, when they had the treadmills,
Yeah,
Hmm.
in the music video.
and that
Yeah.
was like a last minute add-on to the show, because this was also when YouTube sort of started creeping into our space. And I'm pretty sure this was 2006. And someone had seen that OK Go song, and they were like, oh, we got to have this band. And the next thing you know, we're bringing in treadmills, and we're having this sort of band who had never really performed on live TV before do that song live with treadmills. So I remember that, and then like Beyonce, when she was on our show at one of the last that I did, which was 2006, she did Ring the Alarm at Radio City Music Hall. And I don't know if you guys remember that performance, but she was hoisted 150 feet over the
Wow.
stage at
Wow.
Radio City, and we lowered her in for her introduction, and we had sirens and dancers
Wow.
and like a wardrobe change. And it was really an elaborate number. And it's funny, she has on YouTube, actually, she did a behind the scenes, which I found years later. But that was unbelievable. And that was actually a moment in production that I had to have sort of an awkward, confrontation with talent, because that was another part of my job. I oversaw the budget and I tried to keep us on schedule. You do these big award shows and events, and one of the hardest things to do, and this is where our great production managers and unit managers, they're all like incredible, and our talent team. Beyonce wanted to do another run through. It was like 10 minutes to midnight. Nobody wanted to pay her overtime. The follow spots had to come down. I was like, Beyonce, I'm really sorry. I know you want to do it again, but we can't. And no, and I'm like looking at the president of the channel, the president of the label, the president of her management company, and I'm the one who has to deliver this news to like Beyonce. Like, how did I get here? I feel like there was a lot of aha moments like that in life
Well,
for
also,
some of these shows.
you were the person she knew the least. Nobody else wanted to actually. They all had to
Nope.
deal with her the next day.
And nobody wanted to pay it. So
Yeah,
I before I even got to her, I'd be like, "Hey Van, are we gonna pay this overtime?" And like, you gonna pay? Nobody wanted to pay the overtime, so it's like, okay, I'm sorry. So she couldn't do the run through.
Now
So
she'd probably be like, I'll pay for it. Let's do it
she
again.
it came to that.
Oh, okay.
She said, "How much do you think this will cost?" And I said, "Well, it's not just right now, but it is going to put us into overtime tomorrow on the show day," because this was the night before the show. So it pushed us into double time for the next day. And I don't know, I think at the time it was like an $80,000 decision, which by right now is probably $300,000 decision.
Right, right. Do you remember Martin Lawrence at the movie awards one year where he left and got into his car because he said he felt disrespected backstage?
I do. I do remember that.
I was his talent escort for that.
Awkward.
Great.
Awkward.
We were probably yelling at you to go get him.
And you let him go, Perry.
Manager who I was with was just like, "Oh, he's just going to blow off some steam." And the next thing
He'll
I
be back.
hear over the walkie is Reinhardt yelling, going,
Yeah.
"Who's the escort for Martin Lawrence? Why is he sitting in his car?" And I was like,
I
so,
know.
yeah,
I know.
that was crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
But
listen.
you and Van saved the day with
Yeah,
that one.
well, the VMAs were incredible. I thought the movie awards were always a lot of fun to do. Speaking of Robin Reinhardt, when you look back at the relationship MTV had with the studios and the importance of that relationship and the release of the movies and the celebrity talent and the actors and actresses, it was all tied in. It was all tied in. And I feel like it lost its lust when the relationships just sort of fizzled away after a while, and other avenues were just doing more. Like, we just stopped caring
Was that at
about
the beginning of no, that was probably way before even like streaming for movies like Netflix and
Yeah. I
things
mean,
like that. So why do you think relationships fizzled out?
listen, people were losing their jobs. People who had their jobs that managed those relationships were all of a sudden gone. It didn't seem to be as important as it used to be. I mean, I remember people like Robin Berlin and Robin Reinhardt and, Michelle Dix and Tom Calderone and, just everything people did to advocate and maintain those relationships and support the films from a content standpoint. We would put stuff on TRL. I mean, listen, things were always tied together. And the
Of course.
tentpole events was like the center of the wheel for so many projects we did. It was not just like, oh, this person's going to be on the show. It was like, this person's going to be on the show, and we're going to do this for their movie announcement, and we're going to do this with the studio. We're going to release, like, we had strategy.
And we had Tim Rasta on, and he talked about how the ad sales and marketing teams were involved with that strategy too.
Absolutely.
Because it was, and we use this term all the time, but there's this 360, and MTV, I think, I don't want to say invented it, but I feel like it was probably and Tim actually said it himself. He said MTV was the first place to embrace that kind of a strategy where everybody
Absolutely.
was sort of on the same page with everything. And it wasn't like everyone operated in their own little areas and you kind of found out about something before it was too late to do anything. Like I remember these, like the meetings for the VMAs, and it was like 50, 60 people in a room
Yeah.
from every
God.
department just
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
I used to
And
run a lot of those
I
meetings.
remember. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
VMAs, the movie awards, and things like Spring Break as children. Do you have a favorite child? Or you love them all?
You know what I liked one of the most, and I was so disappointed that it never caught on, was the MTV Sports and Music Festival.
Okay.
And we
I
did
went to
this
one
in,
of those in Vegas one year when I worked press
see,
in
this was
LA.
pre-Vegas,
Oh, that was pre-Vegas.
Austin, Texas,
Okay.
2003. It was when we started to getting into the world of action sports. We built this 200-foot snowboard ramp in the middle of Austin, Texas. We had 4 stages. We had over 30,000 people come in 2 days. We had, skateboarding, snowboarding, we just did, it was amazing. And it was so much work and it was so hard to do. And we were outside in Austin, Texas. And it was a huge success, but it was really from the ground up. Nobody had ever done that before. We did it the following year in Memphis, Tennessee. It rained for 2 days. So we never did it the same again because then they started downsizing it. Then it became, oh, we're just going to do one day here and da 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 da. So I was always disappointed that never went anywhere, but it was close to my heart. And then I would say the other big thing that was always really close to me was the launch of the MTV studio. I mean,
Wow.
outside of doing all these incredible shows and moments, and think about what we did in Times Square over the
Yeah.
years.
Absolutely.
And I remember when we opened it, I still have my Peep Show mug.
Wow.
Yeah. Do you remember when this big banner was over the studio? Were you guys around when this happened?
So the studio opened in what, 98?
Yeah.
Because they were doing TRL then, right?
Yes. Oh yeah. We
Yeah,
hadn't even
yeah.
launched TRL yet.
Yeah. So it was just,
Yeah.
I was not there at that time, but I came in just right after. Yeah.
We were looking for studio space for many years, and we had rented out studio space around New York City. We didn't really have a home base. There was always, and then we moved to Times Square, and obviously Times Square started to change because we were there. And Rich Eigendorf, who was my boss at the time, he said, "Listen, we got to go look for some real estate." And I was like, "All right." So the next thing you know, I'm out looking at real estate, and I became the production liaison when we launched the studio. So I helped design it. I worked with the engineers, the production designers, all the different departments, the building operations. I mean, obviously there was a large group of people on this, but I was really proud of that studio, and I was really proud of the way we designed it with the uptown, midtown, downtown, our talent green rooms, and the amount of people we had that just came and went. And then obviously TRL was born, and all the New Year's Eve
I
shows we
think the
did
window
there.
was part of the initial design.
Yeah.
So, like,
Oh
it
yeah.
has to be visible to the street
Oh
and the
yeah.
public to look up.
Totally.
That was the main.
And by the way, we weren't even supposed to do live music because we were under the Mishkov Theater and we had like these sound issues. So when we decided to build it in the building, I remember being like, you guys realize we're not going to be able to do live music like all day long, right? Does everyone realize that? We're making this decision, right? We're not going to be able to do it during theater. And of course, no one ever listened. We did all the time.
What was in that space before it became the studio?
It was a retail space, and then the Minchkov owned it for a while, and it was sort of an empty space, and then it became available. And after searching all over the city, we just decided, let's invest.
Yeah.
So that really hurts me that that studio just, I mean, think about what came out of that studio over the years.
It is incredible to that's I would love to do a podcast just about that studio. That
You
would be
really,
amazing.
it really would, because we technically, we hit a lot of challenges. We had to protect ourselves from the union. We
Hmm.
were right in the middle of Times Square with Local One and IATSE, and we were not trying to disrespect anyone in the union, but we realized we were this small little cable channel, and we had people doing jobs out of necessity, and we didn't have the budget. And I look back at the amount of amazing directors who came out of the MTV studio: Beth McCarthy, Joe DeMayo, Liz Patrick. Liz is
Hmm.
doing SNL, like, Joey Mead, one of the stage managers. Like, the list just goes on and on and on. And I remember every one of them learning to, sitting in that seat and learning to direct. And we could give them direction because we were all just kids.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like again, it was that time of let's try something. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, we're on to the next thing. You
Yeah.
know? It
But
was
do you remember New Music Week? Do you guys
oh my
remember?
god, Spanking
Absolutely.
New Music
Yeah.
Week? Absolutely.
Big,
Oh
and
yeah.
Times Square every day we had, again, behind the scenes of just like what we did in Times Square, how we had to interact with the city, with the police, how we shut down traffic, the boy bands, you know, uh, like Britney Spears. She was what,
Yes.
14 on
Yeah.
44th Street doing Oops, I Did It Again. I remember
Yeah.
going home that night going like, oh my God, we just had this 14-year-old young girl on our stage half naked. What is happening here?
There
Do
was a
you?
Snoop performance out there too, wasn't there? With like
Snoop
the
with
riders and
Dre.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, VMAs had a Bon Jovi performance in the middle of Times Square, which of course was right in the middle of theater, which was another thing people said we could never do, but we did. So I really feel like we were embraced by New York City
Yeah.
also as like, it's safe, bring your kids here. Um, and how the stories of how many kids would
Well,
come
and I
every
have to
day.
say, and I've never had this thought before, but MTV really was one of the best promotions for New York
Yeah.
visitors. It made New York look like it was a family place. It was a fun place. It was the Visitors Bureau probably should have paid MTV for
It
what
was a
MTV was
national
doing.
exposure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
National
it
exposure.
helped us get everything we needed.
Yeah.
For permits and shutting things down, and in the year 2000, the 2000 Video Music Awards with the infamous Eminem performance and the 125 Slim Shadys. Uh, I'll never forget those meetings. And that was like, we had to be synchronized in so many different ways. Technology wise, this was before everything was Wi-Fi. Getting a camera feed to be live outside on 6th Avenue wasn't as easy as it is today. Casting and choreographing, and then it was like we had to shut down everything at a certain time, and we were live. We were live. Nothing. There was nothing like, oh, we're going to pre-record it and then roll it in. It was like, oh no, we were live. That was really amazing when I look back.
Anything that you had to change? Because from a viewer, it all just seemed crazy and seamless and perfect. But was there anything that was planned that you had to like change in the moment during a live show? Anything that comes to
I
mind?
mean, there's a lot of things that, over the
That's part of the
years,
job, to just
it's
be
part of the
on
job.
and adapt in live time.
Yep, absolutely. The year for the VMAs that we had Puffy on doing after Notorious Big had died, he
Yeah.
was doing Missing You. 3 o'clock in the morning, we're trying to rearrange the entire rundown of the show because he wanted to add, some music elements to it. And I remember, sitting with Dave Cerelnik on the stairs at Radio City Music Hall with like trying to appease one talent, but the domino effect it would make.
Because of
So we had to do
timing,
a
right?
lot of stuff like that where, yeah.
Right.
And
Because
then
an
of course,
extra 2 minutes here can just domino everything, right?
right. And then that was also the year that we had the gentleman climb on our stage. So
From Rage Against the Machine.
Rage Against
Yeah.
Machine climbed on our stage. So that was I was talking about this the other day. That was a big audible with Carson Daly, because
Mhm.
we always had a contingency plan sort of standing by. That year, Carson had never done a VMA before, right? But we had Kurt Loder. Kurt was obviously such a pro. And when that stage thing happened, I remember like, get Carson, get him on the mic, can Carson a microphone, let everybody know what's going on. Our like host didn't know what was happening. Like nobody knew what was happening. And, you sort of just cut away and it got resolved. But that was a scary moment, actually. I didn't like that moment at all. I
Well,
thought
it
that
was
whole
also
stage was kind of come down.
well, that's exactly it. I think
Yeah.
everyone in the audience felt the way too, because
Yeah.
who knew how secure that thing was?
Not for a person. Was
Yeah.
not built for someone to climb it. Yeah, so that was an incredible year, actually. That 2000 show, when I look back at it, was, just so much fun. Exhausting.
I can. So I was also just thinking, you were doing some of these award shows pre cell phones, pre being able to text people. Like, can you even imagine that today, having to produce a show without that technology?
I know. Walkie-talkies, babe. And
Yeah,
pagers. And everybody had walkies until they didn't work.
exactly,
Because we
exactly.
didn't have the repeater towers.
Yeah,
You know what? I also feel like, sometimes I feel like we don't get the credit where deserved. Like, for instance, I don't know if you guys remember this, but you probably do from news, but 6 VMAs we did a whole live backstage stream from Radio City Music Hall.
yes,
We had 13 tiny little robotic cameras backstage
yes.
that were in the elevator, the hallway, the news where the red carpet was. And I remember technically, Steve Kaufman and George Epley, like the geniuses, what we had to do to make that happen, because
Mhm.
the technology didn't exist yet. We didn't have the satellite coverage. We didn't have the bandwidth. We had to get the feed from Radio City back to Times Square, literally by running cables, and a couple bounces. Like, this was all
Wow.
internet as we know it. And I don't ever feel like MTV quite, when people say, oh, you were behind the times. I'm like, actually, we really
No
weren't
way.
behind the times. We were very much ahead of the times. We just didn't take the right direction.
Well, we came up with ideas that people would say you can't do, and then figured out how to do them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I worked in .com for the first 5 or 6 years that I was at MTV, and that was the same thing there. It was like, we've never done this before. Well, how are you going to do it? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And we did it.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
So,
it was, pre-internet, which was pre-cell phones, really. So,
yeah,
but we
absolutely.
made it all happen.
Yeah.
So,
After working with a lot of these venues, did you ever like go to concerts and, can't really focus on the show because you're always thinking about backstage and how to get from here to here? Like Tom Calderone said the same thing. He can't go to Radio City or MSG without thinking about the backstage.
yeah, absolutely.
loopholes.
I'm the worst concert goer. I really am. And you don't want to sit home and watch award shows with me either, because I've gotten much better. But I sit there and criticize, and why'd they do that? Oh, they changed the format. Like So I went to the VMAs this year for the first time.
I was going to ask you about
Really?
this year, and
Yeah.
Dan.
I went this
Dan
year
coming back.
because I really wanted to see Van. So, and the UBS, were you there, or did you watch? Or
I watched,
I
but
did
I
not.
wasn't
yeah,
there.
I actually thought it was I thought it was a really good show. Actually, I went with my daughter Annabelle, she's 31, which was great because, there was a lot of young influencers. I try to keep up with music these days, but it's sort of impossible. But yeah, you know what? I saw Van after the show, and it was just such a heartwarming moment. And genuinely, I just love that man. And I was like, Van, I go, were you in the truck the whole time? He goes, yeah. I go, I was feeling you in that truck. I'm like, I always feel like I'm sitting in the back row with the headphones on, and I know what's going on, which I
So who
certainly.
does Salli Frattini call at MTV to get tickets to the movie award? I mean, to the
I
VMAs. And do
I
they come
actually
with an all access
no,
family?
I didn't even have an all access pass. I didn't even have a credential.
You're like, don't you know?
Wow.
And and Ted Apsher, by the way, was working, right?
Wow.
And Ted I didn't see. And then he goes, and he texts me at the end of the night, and I was gone. He goes, did I hear you were here tonight? I'm like, yeah. I never even got to the red carpet, Ted. I had no credentials. He's like, no one gave you credentials? He's like, why
Someone's
didn't you
getting
reach out
fired.
to me? I'm like, I don't know. It's all right. But I did get to go backstage, and another side note story. One of my many nannies, because I was a working mother commuting with this incredibly stressful job, and I have an amazing husband, and I had 3 children. And, this is a little offshoot, but I was one of the first people at MTV to actually have a child. And there was very few, nobody even knew maternity leave benefits. It wasn't a thing. And I started to work from home on Fridays after my second child was born. Nobody used to work from home on Fridays. And I had incredible nannies who, brought, live with us. And I had this woman named Bridget Blitch, and Bridgie was around when my first 2 kids were born, and then she came back when my third child was born. After living in my house and working for Rob and I all those years, she decided she wanted to get into production. She moved to California. I introduced her as production assistant at the time. I was like, I've got this woman. She's worked for me. She's fantastic. Please give her, I didn't demand anyone give anyone a job. She got the
Right.
job. And I'm proud to say Bridget, grew into a West Coast position there of production management. And she ended up as a vice president over the years. And she worked on all
Excellent.
Wow.
these series. And she was let go years ago, like many people were. But she was working on the VMAs.
Wow.
So it was like this full circle moment. I'm like, Bridge,
This year?
do you realize you were home all those years
Right.
watching my children, and now I'm here and you're working?
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. So Bridget's actually the one who was like, hey, I'm working. Do you want to get some tickets? But I did reach out to Susanna, who used to work for Kathy Flynn, and
Yeah.
she
I used
took
to be
care
on
of
loan
us.
to those guys when I was working with Paul in
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You did
programming.
work with Kathy
And she was like, we
Claire
need you to
and
do like seating and, the seat cards and that whole thing. So
yeah.
it was a good break from my regular scheduling and programming role with
Yeah. We
Paul
call
D.
that all the stops, Andrew. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it was cool to go back this year. The show, they don't get all the stars anymore.
That's
We
what we
said
were
that.
saying earlier.
Yeah,
They
it
just
was a
don't get
shame.
the
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah.
Nobody comes.
Well, it goes back to, they don't really have that studio relations team much anymore.
Yeah.
So there's nobody there's no compelling reason for the folks to show up. And
Especially when you
also-
watch the Emmys and some of those where it seems like everyone's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emmys, Oscars, and
And the
Grammys.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Still mean something, but
I mean,
sadly,
it
and
could
they don't do
possibly-
the movie awards anymore.
Nope,
That was a
nope.
quiet, all of a sudden,
Yeah.
that was canceled, which was really sad
Yep.
as well.
I know that we want to mention life after MTV, but I was looking again through your 6-page resume and something that stuck out that I've actually watched was the drone racing league.
Oh my God,
How was
yes.
that?
That was so cool.
It was it wa- it wa-
The
it was in
DRL, yeah.
these inside kind of massive studios. That was
Arenas.
wild.
Yeah.
Arenas. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they hadn't done a live event in front of a big audience before, so they asked me to come in and sort of help oversee that live part of the show. So I had a couple years working with them on these events, which was really fun.
It's been wild.
Yeah,
Yeah.
DRL was kind of cool. And I did a lot of work for YouTube post MTV. And that's how I launched my company. By I left in 2007. I was part of that massive "Let's Let Everyone on Top Go," which I still think was a very defining moment in history.
Hmm.
We lost a lot of ambassadors, and Tom Freston had already gone, and it just a lot of people left during that time. I just took a little break. I had a kid going off to college. I had a daughter leaving for junior high. I had a 7-year-old baby at home that never even knew his mother. I was like, I'm just going to stay home for a little while. The gentleman that I did the Microsoft, we did the Xbox 360 launch party years ago. This guy named Christy Caesar worked for Microsoft at the time. He left, went to work for YouTube, calls me up and says, "Hey, I want to do sort of a VMA for YouTube." And I was like, "All right." And this is 2007. So we did in 2008 YouTube Live, which was the first live entertainment stream that YouTube ever did. And once again, they didn't even know how to do live streaming. They didn't have the backbone yet to do anything live. So I made myself look really good by bringing in people like Steve Kaufman and our amazing MTV force
Because you did the
event
webcam
people.
thing
Yeah,
already. Yeah.
and we built their streaming platform. I mean, Steve
Wow.
helped design it with the engineers, but that was a first, and it was all the YouTube talent. But people like Katy Perry, when I Kissed the
Wow.
Girl
Yeah.
was, launched on YouTube. So I ended up doing a lot of stuff for them
Did
and,
you format the award show, if you were even involved in that, like you did or like it was on broadcast TV? Because you didn't have commercial breaks, I'm
no,
sure.
yeah.
So was it easier to produce and kind
Yeah,
of
and it
go
was
with?
more of a entertainment special than it was awards because YouTube had all this talent that they really wanted to sort of take credit for. So it really became much more of an entertainment special. But yeah, I did do the format just in the sense of like, okay, what's a rundown for broadcast? And that was a weird thing. I was like, what are your rating expectations? I remember asking that questions. And they're like, what do you mean ratings? And I'm like, I mean, how many people do you think are going to watch this? And they're like, oh, this is all about VOD. And I was like, VOD, oh, video on demand. Okay, it didn't matter about ratings. So, allowed you to do sort of really
But it
cool
was
events.
live. It was
It was
live.
live,
Yeah.
yeah. And then later on, I did the YouTube Music Awards, which was 2013. We did that, that was an award show, and that was the first and last time they ever did a big global event like that.
Why do you think that was?
The first or the last?
The Well, I know why they did the first because you want to get into that space and you want to kind of own that space and you want to have that relationship with artists and all of that stuff. But why was it the last?
I think, I thought about that a lot. The thing about the music awards is we worked with Spike Jones and we created music videos. Like the performances were shot in a way that they are all these mini music videos. So we had this world of live broadcast cameras and film cameras, which actually created a lot of friction in some ways because we had a lot of film directors who didn't really understand the compatibility issues we were having. We were working with the best of the best, trying a whole bunch of new things. We went way over budget. I
I was
think
going
we
to say
got
that
some.
sounds expensive.
We
Yeah.
went way over budget. We definitely had some conflicts occurring between the film and the live world, which was a challenge. And at the end of the day, I think YouTube decided they were a platform versus a creative entity that wanted to own these tentpole events. And I
Yeah.
think as they got behind the YouTube creators, and that's when they really started to sort of be like, let's focus on these channels, let's focus on our creators. So I don't know, but we did a big event at the Kennedy Center with them. We did this incredible event with the Guggenheim Museum called YouTube Play. Oh my God, that was another like live stream event we did with the Guggenheim. I went around New York City trying to find a museum partner for YouTube. We did this incredible projection on the outside of the Guggenheim.
I mean, it's an incredible building to put a projection on, too. Yeah.
And the whole thing had to happen within a 24-hour period. So it was another crazy event, and I did. But I had some really good years working with YouTube, which was great.
Now, can you, for all of these shows that you were doing and the amount of work that went into it and the time it took, can you imagine doing one of those again today?
Hence, when people say to me, do you want to go back and do the awards again? You know what, Perry, if I'm being honest, it was a lot of work and a
It
lot
is
of
a lot of
stress.
work. Yeah.
And I think the answer is no. Like, I think it would I always say it'd have to be the right thing because
Unless you could bring the team back together.
well, when they recently made this big announcement about MTV, I was, what my first reaction was, and I literally had the rundown in my head, and I was like, Sally, stop. I'm like, we need to do a big New Year's Eve special. We need to do a MTV New Year's Eve, Times Square, in the studio, have Carson Daly host it. We got to do a whole takeover like we used to, and put this network, either
Have you
say
pitched it?
goodbye or move it on or whatever. But I immediately went into I should, and then I go, well, should I start? Should I start this? Should I write it? Should I
Wait,
try to sell it?
are we
Who's
making
got the
news? Are
money?
we making news right here?
No, but think about it. It would be so
This is the
great.
pre-planning meeting.
It would be brilliant. It really would be.
And then I'm like, oh God, it's November. You have Thanksgiving. You're going away. Like, do you really want to take this on? So anyway, I still have a lot of passion for the stuff that we did. But, I also have learned now later in life just about stress. And I've seen so many of my friends get sick and tumors growing out of stress.
Yeah.
Stress is a silent killer. I'm just sort of enjoying life, and I'm really enjoying watching my kids, thrive in their careers. Charlie's in production. He works for Michael Fure production, and he just came, he just finished the US Open. He works on the Super Bowl. Harrison works in sports. He's got this great job with a new company that he was with ESPN for years in marketing. And Annabelle's working for Diageo, a huge, beverage manufacturer brand, Diageo. So I'm sort of enjoying that.
I think that's, living it through their eyes, continuing.
And the funny thing is, we used to think that stress was like, oh, you're not really working that hard if you're not
It's actually not
stressed.
stressed.
Like, and,
Right.
and it like, you go, wait, that was the stupidest thing to think. Like, why did we think that? That was crazy. So
We did not have National Mental Health Days
no,
or
no,
support
no.
groups, but we also didn't have the internet, which is such a challenge right now.
Yeah.
So, and social media. But you know what, Perry? Like, that's the sort of stuff, like that idea I just threw out to you. That's the sort of stuff we used to do every single day. I was listening to Tim Rasta, and I remember how many times I'd be like, Tim, I got this. We have this great idea, Mariah Carey. She wants to perform on water, and she's in Miami. And I think we want to, this would be a great thing for Pepsi to sponsor. Like, what do you think? We'd have to build a stage on water at a pool in Miami for the VMA, Mariah Carey. And, I just remember these guys, they'd pitch it and it'd come back. And then the next thing it was like, yep, we're doing this. We're going to be on water. And you're like, I miss those days. Like the
Well, and
hallway
yeah,
conversations. People
it,
don't have that anymore,
no, and the other great part of that was those ideas could come from anybody.
Anybody.
It could be the head of the network, or it could be like a PA. Like somebody would go to somebody and say, "I like it. Let's move forward with it."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And all the new businesses that would come our way. We were so inspired by, think about video gaming, right? We started Gamers Week. And
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
another thing born out of ad sales, because here we were doing all these, 360 launches and Sony and all the video game releases. We did those year-end holiday specials.
Yep.
And how do you tie gaming in with music and celebrity,
And it all, we did one of the first live gaming competitions. Like I remember going to one of these video game competitions, like, holy crap, what a world this is.
Yeah.
And look where it's come. It's finally found its platform,
Right before I left, one of the last things I worked on, we did a weekend with the Jonas Brothers, and the whole thing was shot on cell phones. And it was, we had other cameras there to shoot other stuff, but it was really like them taking their phones and shooting themselves for 36 hours. And it was amazing. I mean, it was like, who else would have done that?
Yeah.
Like no place else would have thought to do that or had the access to talent to be able to do it.
And the approval from above.
Yeah.
That just said, do it. Let's try it.
Yeah.
It's hard to fail. It's really
So
a lot of good ideas.
This has been a great conversation, and thank you for taking the time. One last question. Do you have a favorite New York City music venue, past or present, and what was the best show you ever saw there?
Or worked there, I guess.
I'm going to have to go with Radio City. I think Radio City Music Hall is still one of my favorite places. I saw Tony Bennett there.
Wow.
Which was obviously one of his last shows. I also really love the Met. If you remember, we did 2 Video Music Awards at the Metropolitan Opera House. Another place that said you could never do things, which we did. The Met was fabulous. The most amazing stage I've ever seen in my entire life. But I never really went back to see a show there. So I'm going to put Radio City on the list. And I think the Beacon is so cool too. But it's the one thing I miss about living in the city or closer to the city now.
I'm going to see Louis C.K. at the Beacon next weekend, I think it is.
Yeah.
No, November.
That's cool. Have you guys been to the Sphere yet?
I have not.
I've not been out there yet.
No.
Oh my God. That was another thing that got my wheels turning really big time. I saw U2 when it first opened.
I wish I'd seen them.
I was able to still have some friends who gave me a backstage tour.
Oh wow. Do a VMA from the Sphere. That'll be good.
But it wasn't even a VMA. I mean, I had so many ideas after that, and I was like, oh my God. So if you have a chance, you gotta go to a show there. It's incredible. So anyway, I've enjoyed chatting with you.
Yep.
Thank you,
Sally.
Thank you, Sally. We
really
appreciate
the road. There's always so many memories. So thank you.
Well, we're happy to do a part 2 whenever you're
all right. And if anyone takes my idea about we got to do one last hurrah, just for the record, I need to be involved. So
me too.
Yeah.
Raising my hand.
Yeah.
I think we would have no problem pulling together the team.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
All right. Thank you, Sally.
You guys.
Thanks,
You're
Sally.
welcome.
We'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.